The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and I stepped into the hallway of the Riverside Hotel carrying my weekend bag and a heart full of reluctance. Corporate team building retreats weren't my thing, but as the newest senior analyst at Morrison and Hayes, I didn't exactly have a choice. The carpet beneath my feet was that generic hotel pattern designed to hide stains, and the walls were painted in that particular shade of beige that exists only in hotels and dental offices. Room 412. I checked my keycard sleeve and started down the corridor, my sneakers making soft squeaking sounds against the polished floor. The smell of industrial cleaning products mixed with someone's overpowering cologne hung in the air. I was already planning my escape strategy: show up for the mandatory sessions, smile politely at the networking dinner, then retreat to my room to catch up on work emails and maybe binge-watch something mindless on Netflix. That was the plan anyway. I had just inserted my key card into the slot when I heard a voice behind me that made my entire body freeze. No fucking way. I knew that voice. I knew it the way you know your own heartbeat, the way you know the creak of your childhood home's stairs in the dark. It was a voice that had starred in 1,000 teenage fantasies, a voice that had once told me see you Monday on a Friday afternoon in May, not knowing that Monday would never come because his family moved away that weekend. I turned around slowly, half convinced I was having some kind of stress-induced hallucination. But no, there he was. Ethan Mitchell stood about 10 feet away, frozen in the act of unlocking the door to room 413, right next to mine. He looked like someone had taken my 17-year-old crush and run him through a filter labeled impossibly more attractive. The boyish softness had given way to sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw dusted with carefully maintained stubble. His dark hair was shorter now, professionally styled instead of falling into his eyes the way it used to. He wore a fitted navy button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that definitely hadn't existed in high school. But his eyes, those warm brown eyes that had once met mine across the cafeteria, across the classroom, across the too small gap between our desks in AP history, those were exactly the same. Ethan, my voice came out smaller than I intended, barely more than a whisper. Ryan, he said my name like he was testing it out, like he was making sure it was really me. Then his face broke into that smile I remembered so well, the one that had made my 16-year-old self forget how to breathe. Holy shit, Ryan Torres, I can't believe it's you. We stood there for a moment, just staring at each other across the bland hotel hallway while the ice machine hummed somewhere nearby. 10 years. It had been 10 years since I'd seen him, since his family had packed up and moved to Seattle for his dad's job promotion, since he disappeared from my life as suddenly as a dream dissolves in the morning. I managed, my brain struggling to catch up with reality. What are you doing here? Morrison and Hayes retreat, right? He gestured vaguely down the hallway. I'm with the Seattle office. They flew me in for the consolidation meetings. He paused, then added with a slightly sheepish grin, I guess we're neighbors for the weekend. Of course we were. Of course the universe would do this to me. I'd spent 10 years carefully constructing a life where I didn't think about Ethan Mitchell every single day, where I didn't wonder what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to say something, anything, before he left, where I didn't replay every interaction we'd ever had, searching for signs I might have missed. And now here he was, staying in the room right next to mine, close enough that I'd probably hear him brushing his teeth through the walls. Right, I said, trying to inject some normalcy into my voice. The retreat, yeah, I'm with the San Francisco office, junior team. San Francisco, Ethan repeated, and something flickered across his face. Surprise? Pleasure? I couldn't quite read it. That's incredible, Ryan. I always knew you'd end up somewhere amazing. The words hung between us, loaded with a subtext neither of us was quite ready to address. In high school we'd been, what, friends, almost friends, something undefined that lived in the space between friendly and something more, something I'd never had the courage to name out loud. I started. We could, he said at the same time. We both laughed and some of the tension eased. God, I'd forgotten the sound of his laugh, how it had always made me feel like I'd accomplished something extraordinary just by causing it. You first, I said. I was going to say we should catch up, Ethan said, leaning against his door frame with a casualness I envied. I mean, if you want, I know you probably have plans or whatever, but… No, I said too quickly. No plans, just the schedule for tomorrow. Tonight's free. Dinner, he suggested. There's that restaurant downstairs, or we could find something nearby, my treat, for old time's sake. Old time's sake? As if the old times hadn't consumed my thoughts for years afterward. As if I hadn't measured every date, every potential relationship against the impossible standard of how Ethan Mitchell made me feel with nothing more than a smile across a classroom. But I nodded because what else could I do? Turn down the chance to spend time with him, retreat to my room and wonder for the rest of my life what might have happened over dinner. That sounds great, I said, proud of how normal I sounded. Give me 20 minutes to change and decompress. Perfect, I'll knock when I'm ready. He disappeared into his room, and I stood in the hallway for a moment longer, staring at his closed door and trying to process what had just happened. Then I let myself into my own room, dropped my bag on the floor and sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. The room was generic hotel standard, cream-colored walls, landscape painting that could have been anywhere, desk with a chair, TV mounted on the wall. Through the wall to my left, I could hear the muffled sounds of Ethan moving around in his room. Water running, a drawer opening and closing, the ordinary sounds of someone settling in. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages to Marcus, my best friend since college. Me same but soon, 5 days. Ethan, 5 days, I can do this. Me, we can do this, together. The flight to San Francisco took just under 2 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window, replaying the weekend in my mind, touching my fingers to my lips and remembering Ethan's kisses. When I landed, I texted him immediately. Me home safe, your turn. Ethan, just landed. Seattle is gray and rainy, feels wrong without you here. Me soon, 2 weeks and I'll be there. Ethan, counting the seconds. I took the BART home to my studio apartment in the Mission, the familiar sounds and smells of the city wrapping around me. But it all felt different now, colored by what had happened this weekend. I dropped my bag by the door and collapsed onto my bed, exhausted but buzzing with energy. My phone rang, FaceTime from Ethan. I answered immediately, and there he was, sitting on what must be his couch, his apartment visible behind him. Hi, he said, smiling. Hi yourself. I just wanted to see your face, is that pathetic? If it is, we're both pathetic, I was about to call you. We talked for an hour about nothing important. About his apartment, my apartment, what we'd had for lunch on the plane. The comfortable, mundane conversations of people who just wanted to be in each other's presence, even if only virtually. I should let you go, Ethan said eventually, though he looked reluctant. You probably have things to do. Not really, but you're right, we should both get some sleep. Call me tomorrow. Absolutely, good night, Ethan. Good night, Ryan, sweet dreams. The screen went dark and I was alone in my apartment, in my bed, 800 miles away from the person I most wanted to be with. But I was smiling. The week crawled by with agonizing slowness. Work was busy, which helped, but every spare moment I found myself texting Ethan or thinking about Friday. We talked every night, sometimes for hours. He told me about his day, about his coworkers, about the project he was working on. I told him about the presentation I had to give, about Marcus's latest dating disaster, about the new Thai place I'd tried near my apartment. I want to take you there when you visit, I said on Wednesday night. I want to go everywhere with you, Ethan replied. Show me your whole world. Thursday night, I cleaned my apartment with more care than it had probably ever received. I changed my sheets. Bought fresh flowers for the tiny kitchen table, stocked up on coffee and food and wine. Marcus came over to help and to provide moral support. You're nervous, he observed, watching me rearrange the pillows on my bed for the 3rd time. Of course I'm nervous. What if it's weird? What if the magic only worked because we were in a hotel away from real life? Ryan, deep breath, it's going to be fine, better than fine, it's going to be amazing. You don't know that. I do, actually, because I've known you for 7 years and I've never seen you this happy. That's not going to go away just because you're in your apartment instead of a hotel. I wanted to believe him, I really did. Friday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. even though Ethan's flight didn't land until 7 p.m. I couldn't sleep. I was too wired, too anxious, too excited. Work was impossible. I made mistakes on simple spreadsheets, lost track of conversations, spent more time watching the clock than doing anything productive. Finally, at 4 p.m. I gave up and left early. I went home, showered, changed my outfit 4 times before settling on jeans and a casual blue button-down that Marcus had once said made my eyes look good. Then I paced my apartment, checking my phone every 30 seconds. Ethan, boarding now, see you in 2 hours. Me, I'll be at arrivals, can't wait. The drive to SFO took forever, even though traffic wasn't bad. I parked and made my way to the arrivals area, joining the crowd of people waiting for their loved ones. And then I waited, checked the flight status on time, checked my phone, no new messages, watched the doors where passengers emerged, searching every face. Then I saw him. Ethan walked through the arrivals gate carrying a duffel bag, his eyes scanning the crowd. When they found me, his whole face lit up and he started moving faster, weaving through the other travelers. And then he was there, right in front of me, and I forgot about every worry, every fear, every doubt I'd had. "Hi," he said breathlessly. "Hi." He dropped his bag and pulled me into his arms, kissing me right there in the middle of SFO arrivals while people streamed around us. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his jacket, and it felt like coming home. "I missed you so much," he said against my lips. "It's only been 5 days. Longest 5 days of my life." We stood there for another moment, just holding each other before I finally pulled back. "Come on, let's get you home." The drive back to the city gave us a chance to catch up in person. Ethan told me about his week, about the project he'd finished, about his friend who'd gotten engaged. I told him about my disastrous presentation that had actually gone well despite my nerves. "This is where you live?" Ethan asked as I pulled into a parking spot near my building. "This is it, fair warning, it's tiny, like really tiny. I don't care if it's a closet, you're there so it's perfect." My studio apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian. One room that served as bedroom, living room, and office, with a small kitchen alcove and a bathroom that barely fit a shower. But it had high ceilings, big windows, and it was mine. "It's perfect," Ethan said, setting down his bag and looking around. "Very you. You don't know what very me looks like anymore." "Sure I do, books everywhere, check. Organized chaos, check. That poster from the Miyazaki exhibit at the museum, check. Wait, you still have that?" I looked at the poster. He was pointing to a print from the Spirited Away exhibit we'd gone to with our AP art history class junior year. "Yeah, I've had it since high school." "So have I," Ethan said softly. "It's hanging in my bedroom in Seattle." The fact that we'd both kept the same poster for over 10 years, both hung it in our bedrooms, felt significant in a way I couldn't quite articulate. "Are you hungry?" I asked, needing to do something with my hands. "We could order in, or I could make something, or—" "Ryan," Ethan crossed the small space between us and took my hands. "I didn't come here for the food, I came here to be with you. We could eat cardboard and I'd be happy." "Well, I can definitely do better than cardboard." I ordered Thai from the place I'd mentioned, and while we waited for delivery, we settled on my bed, the only real seating in the apartment, and talked. It should have felt strange having him here in my space, this person who was simultaneously intimately familiar and excitingly new. But it didn't. It felt right. "So this is your life," Ethan said, looking around. "Your books, your space, your city." "This is my life," I confirmed. "What do you think?" "I think I want to be part of it." The food arrived and we ate sitting on my bed, containers spread around us, talking and laughing. Ethan told me embarrassing stories about his coworkers, and I told him about the time Marcus had accidentally sent a very personal email to our entire office. "I like this," Ethan said eventually, setting aside his empty container. "Just being here with you, no pressure, no spectacle, just us." "Me too." He leaned over and kissed me, tasting like pad thai and possibility. The kiss deepened, and suddenly we were lying back on the bed, his weight a comfortable pressure on top of me. "Is this okay?" he asked, pulling back slightly. "More than okay." We spent the rest of the evening tangled together, kissing and touching and talking. At some point, we changed into comfortable clothes and settled in to watch a movie on my laptop, but neither of us paid much attention to it. We were too busy being together, making up for the days apart. "Stay," I said when the movie ended, "tonight with me." "I was hoping you'd ask," Ethan admitted. "I got a hotel room just in case, but—" Cancel it, stay here, I want to wake up with you tomorrow. We brushed our teeth side by side in my tiny bathroom and it felt almost unbearably domestic. This was what a future with him could look like, sharing space, sharing routines, sharing life. In bed, with the lights off and the city sounds filtering through the windows, Ethan pulled me close. Thank you for this, he said quietly, for letting me into your world. Thank you for coming, for choosing to make this work even though it's hard. It's not hard when it's you, he said. Being apart is hard, this is easy. I fell asleep in his arms, and for the first time in 5 days I slept soundly. I woke up Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through the windows and Ethan's arm draped across my waist. For a moment, I just lay there, savoring the feeling of having him here in my bed in my life. You're starring, Ethan mumbled, his eyes still closed. How do you know your eyes are closed? I can feel it, he cracked one eye open and smiled. Morning. Morning. He pulled me closer and kissed me, slow and thorough. What's the plan for today? I thought I'd show you around, the real San Francisco, not the tourist stuff. Perfect, I want to see everything. We started with breakfast at my favorite spot, a tiny cafe in the Mission that made the best chilaquiles I'd ever had. Ethan ordered the same thing and we sat at a wobbly table by the window, watching the neighborhood come to life. This place is great, Ethan said. Do you come here a lot? Every Sunday, it's part of my routine. Tell me about your routines, I want to know all of them. So I did. I told him about my Sunday morning cafe visits, my Tuesday night dinners with Marcus, my Friday afternoon walks through Golden Gate Park, the small rituals that made up my life. Now you, I said, tell me about your routines. Ethan talked about his Saturday morning runs around Green Lake, his weekly calls with his mom, the farmer's market he went to every other weekend. Ordinary things, but hearing about them felt like being given pieces of his life to hold. After breakfast, we walked through the Mission, and I showed him the murals in Clarion Alley, the bookstore where I spent too much money, the park where Marcus and I had celebrated my promotion with a bottle of cheap wine. I love this, Ethan said, lacing his fingers through mine as we walked, seeing where you live, understanding your world better. We took the BART to the Castro, walked up and down the hills, stopped for coffee at a place with rainbow flags in the windows. Everywhere we went, I was hyper-aware of our joined hands, of the way Ethan looked at me, of the quiet joy of being together in public, not hiding anything. Can I tell you something? Ethan asked as we sat in Dollars Park, watching people play volleyball and walk their dogs. Anything. I keep having these moments where I can't quite believe this is real, like I'm going to wake up and find out the whole weekend at the hotel was a dream. I know what you mean, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. But it hasn't. No. It hasn't. He turned to face me more fully. Ryan, I know we've only been doing this for a week, but I need you to know I'm all in. This isn't casual for me, you're not casual for me. My heart started pounding. It's not casual for me either. Good, he smiled, that brilliant smile that made me feel like I'd won something precious. Because I'm falling in love with you again, still, whatever the right word is. I knew I should probably be cautious, should pump the brakes, should point out all the logical reasons why we should slow down. But sitting there in the sunshine with Ethan looking at me like I was something wonderful, caution felt impossible. I'm falling in love with you too, I said. He kissed me right there in the park, and I didn't care who saw. We spent the rest of the day exploring the Haight, the Presidio, the beach. We had dinner at a seafood place by the water, watching the sun set over the Pacific. I don't want tomorrow to come, I admitted as we walked back to my apartment hand in hand. Me either, but we have 2 more weeks until you come to Seattle, and then we figure out the next visit after that, and eventually maybe we figure out how to make the distance smaller. You'd move to San Francisco. I'd consider it, or maybe you'd consider Seattle, or maybe we find somewhere new together, I don't know, but I know I want to find a way to wake up next to you more than twice a month. That night, we stayed up late talking about possibilities, about what a future together might look like, about jobs and apartments and the logistics of building a life with someone when you start out 800 miles apart. We'll figure it out, Ethan said eventually, pulling me close, one day at a time. Sunday morning came too quickly. Ethan's flight was at 2 p.m., which meant we had to leave for the airport by noon. We spent the morning being lazy, sleeping in, making coffee, stealing kisses in the kitchen. It felt so normal, so domestic, so right that the thought of saying goodbye made my chest ache. "What if I just didn't get on the plane?" Ethan suggested as we got dressed. "What if I just stayed here forever?" Tempting, but you have a job and an apartment and a life in Seattle. Details. At the airport, we sat together at his gate, hands clasped, not talking much. What was there to say? We both knew this was going to be hard. When they called his boarding group, Ethan stood and pulled me up with him. 2 weeks, he said. You'll be in Seattle in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I echoed. And then we'll have a whole weekend together. I'm going to show you everything, my favorite restaurants, the best coffee shops, the view from Cary Park. I can't wait. He kissed me one more time, long and sweet and full of promise. I love you, Ryan Torres. It was the first time he'd said it without qualification, without the falling before it, just a simple statement of fact. I love you too, Ethan Mitchell. He boarded the plane, turning back to wave at me one more time before disappearing down the jetway. I stayed until the plane pushed back from the gate, watching it taxi toward the runway. The drive home felt longer than usual. My apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I sat on my bed, our bed for the weekend, and let myself feel sad for a moment. Then my phone buzzed. Ethan, missing you already. This is going to be the longest 2 weeks ever. Me same, but we can do this. We've done 5 days, we can do 14. Ethan, call you when I land. Me please. Marcus came over that evening with pizza and beer, demanding a full recap of the weekend. He said he loves me, I told him. Of course he does. The man flew 800 miles to spend 2 days with you. People who aren't in love don't do that. I said it back. Also obvious, you've been in love with him since you were 16. Is it crazy to be in love with someone after 1 week of actually dating? Marcus considered this. Normally, I'd say yes, but you two have history. You're not really starting from scratch. You're picking up where you left off, except now you're both adults who actually know how to communicate. The distance is really hard though. I bet, but you know what? I've seen you date a lot of guys in the years I've known you, and I've never seen you light up the way you do when you talk about Ethan. That's worth fighting for. Yeah, I agreed softly. It really is. The 2 weeks until my Seattle visit crawled by, but we filled them with constant communication. FaceTime calls every night, good morning texts, random photos throughout the day. Ethan sent me pictures of his favorite coffee shop, the view from his apartment, his ridiculous collection of houseplants. I sent him photos of my morning commute, the new book I was reading, Marcus doing something stupid at the bar. We fell into a rhythm, morning texts when we woke up. Lunch check-ins, evening FaceTime calls that stretched for hours. It wasn't the same as being together, but it helped. Finally, it was Thursday night, and I was packing for my Seattle trip. Ethan, flight still on time. Me, yep, land at 7:45 tomorrow. Ethan, I'm taking Friday off so I can pick you up, and I cleared my whole weekend, it's all yours. Me, all mine. Ethan, every second. The flight Friday evening felt interminable. I was too excited to read, too distracted to work, too anxious to sleep. When we finally landed, I practically ran off the plane. Ethan was waiting at arrivals just like I had been 2 weeks ago, and the sight of him made my heart jump. He was wearing jeans and a Seahawks hoodie, his hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. When he saw me, his face broke into that smile I loved. And then we were moving toward each other, meeting in the middle with a kiss that felt like coming home. Hi, he said when we finally broke apart. Hi. Welcome to Seattle, it's raining. I looked around and realized that yes, it was indeed raining, perfect weather. Liar, come on, let's get you home. Home, he'd said it so casually, but the word hit me hard. His apartment wasn't my home, but the way he said it, the way he was looking at me, it felt like it could be. Ethan's apartment was in Capitol Hill, a one-bedroom with exposed brick walls and large windows that overlooked the neighborhood. It was bigger than my studio, decorated with a mix of modern furniture and personal touches, framed photos, art prints, shelves full of books. This is amazing, I said, setting down my bag and looking around. It's home, Ethan said, or it has been, but it's felt kind of empty lately. Turns out I prefer it when you're here. I've been here for 30 seconds. And it's already better. He ordered pizza from his favorite place, and we ate it sitting on his couch, my feet in his lap, talking about our weeks apart. Then he took me on a tour of the apartment, showing me everything: his bedroom with the Spirited Away poster over his bed, his tiny balcony with a view of the Space Needle in the distance, his kitchen where he admitted he mostly just made coffee and ordered takeout. I want to show you the whole city tomorrow, Ethan said as we got ready for bed. Pike Place Market, Cary Park, Discovery Park, and there's this amazing sushi place I want to take you to. I'm in, show me everything. That night, lying in his bed with the sound of rain against the windows, I felt more at peace than I had in 2 weeks. This feels right, I said quietly. It does, Ethan agreed, pulling me closer. You fit here in my space and my life. You fit in mine too. Good, because I plan on being in it for a very long time. Saturday was perfect. Ethan took me everywhere. We wandered through Pike Place Market, watching the fish throwers and buying fresh flowers. We had coffee at a tiny cafe with the best latte I'd ever tasted. We walked through Discovery Park, looking out over the Puget Sound. We had dinner at the sushi place, which was indeed amazing. But more than the places, it was the feeling of being together, of holding hands on the street, of stealing kisses when we thought no one was looking, of learning the geography of each other's lives. Sunday afternoon, sitting at Cary Park with the whole city spread out before us, Ethan turned to me with a serious expression. I've been thinking, he said. About us, about the future, about how to make this work long term. My stomach tightened. Okay. I talked to my boss last week about the possibility of transferring to the San Francisco office. I stared at him. You what? It's not definite, but it's possible. They're actually looking for someone with my experience level for a project starting in about 6 months. I could put in for a transfer. Ethan, that's huge. Are you sure? I'm sure about you, he said simply. And San Francisco has just as many opportunities as Seattle, plus. You're already established there. It makes more sense for me to move than for you to uproot your whole life. But your family is here, your friends. My family is 3 hours away in the suburbs and I see them once a month if I'm lucky. My friends will still be my friends. But you, he took my hands. You're my future, Run. I want to wake up next to you more than twice a month. I want to build a life with you, not just visit it. Tears pricked my eyes. I want that too, but I don't want you to give up everything. I'm not giving up anything, he interrupted. I'm choosing something better. I'm choosing us. I kissed him, tasting salt from my own tears. 6 months. Maybe sooner, maybe later, but yes, that's the timeline. I'd start looking for apartments in San Francisco, we'd figure out the logistics, and then we'd actually be together, really together. Yeah. I pulled him close, burying my face in his neck. I love you so much. I love you too, and I promise we're going to make this work, whatever it takes. The next 6 months were a blur of flights and FaceTime calls and counting down days until the next visit. Sometimes I went to Seattle, sometimes Ethan came to San Francisco. We fell into a pattern: 2 weeks apart, 1 weekend together. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Ethan's transfer came through in month 4. He'd be moving to San Francisco at the end of January, joining a new project team in the SF office. We'd be able to actually date like normal people, see each other whenever we wanted, not just on carefully scheduled weekends. The thought filled me with a happiness I could barely contain. In early January, Ethan came down for a weekend to apartment hunt. We talked about him getting his own place, about not rushing into living together, about taking things at a reasonable pace. But on Sunday afternoon, after viewing our 5th bland, overpriced 1-bedroom, Ethan turned to me with a thoughtful expression. What if we didn't do this separately? He asked. What do you mean? What if we got a place together, a real place, not your studio or some generic 1-bedroom, something that's ours? My heart started pounding. Are you serious? Completely serious? Run, we've been doing long distance for 6 months. We've basically been living together every other weekend. We know we can kahubatut. Why not make it official? Because it's a huge step, because what if it doesn't work out? What if it does? He took my hands. Look, I know it's fast by normal standards, but we're not normal. We've known each other for over 10 years. We've loved each other for most of that time. I don't need to date you for another year to know I want to build a life with you. I thought about it, really thought about it. About waking up next to him every morning, about coming home to him every night, about building something together, something real and permanent. Okay, I said. Okay. Okay, let's do it, let's get a place together. Uthan's smile could have lit up the entire city. He pulled me into a kiss right there on the sidewalk, and I didn't care who saw. We found our apartment 3 weeks later, a 2-bedroom in the Mission with hardwood floors, big windows, and enough space for both of us to have a home office. It was more than I could afford alone, but together it was perfect. Uthan moved in on a Saturday in late January. Muckas and a few of my other friends helped haul boxes up 3 flights of stairs. Uthan's friends from Seattle had driven down with a U-Haul full of his furniture. By evening, the apartment was chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture arranged haphazardly, takeout containers scattered on every surface. Everyone had gone home, and it was just us, sitting on our new couch, surveying our new home. We did it, Uthan said, pulling me against his side. We really did. No more long distance, no more goodbyes at airports, just us together figuring out life. I looked around at the boxes still to unpack, at the blank walls waiting for art, at the space that would become ours. Then I looked at Uthan, this man who had been my first love, my best friend, my second chance. I have something for you, he said suddenly, getting up and rummaging through one of the boxes. He pulled out a frame and handed it to me. It was a photo I'd never seen before, us at 17, sitting together at a school assembly, his arms slung casually over my shoulder, both of us laughing at something. We looked so young, so unaware of how our story would unfold. Where did you get this? Your mom sent it to me, Uthan admitted. I reached out to her on Facebook a few months ago. I wanted to tell her we'd reconnected, and she sent me this. She said she'd always known we were special. Tears blurred my vision. We are. We are, Uthan confirmed. He took the frame and set it on the bookshelf we'd assembled earlier, the first decoration in our new home, a reminder of where we started. And where we're going, I added. He pulled me to my feet and into his arms. You know what the best part of all this is? What? We get to wake up together tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for as long as you'll have me. Forever then, I said, I plan on keeping you forever. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. We stood there in our new apartment, surrounded by the physical evidence of our combined lives, his books and my books, his furniture and mine, everything mixing together into something new, something ours. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, we had everything we needed. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? For finding me again, for not giving up on us, for moving 800 miles to build a life with me. Thank you for being worth it, Uthan replied, for being worth everything. He kissed me, soft and sweet, and it tasted like coming home, like second chances and new beginnings, like everything I'd ever wanted. In the morning, we'd start unpacking, turning this apartment into a home. We'd figure out whose books went where, how to arrange the furniture, what to hang on the walls. We'd learn each other's morning routines, navigate sharing a bathroom, decide who did dishes and who did laundry. We'd build a life one day at a time. But that night, we just held each other on our new couch in our new apartment in the city that was ours now, together. Finally, after all these years together. Epilogue 1 year later. Run, have you seen my blue tie? I looked up from where I was attempting to fix my own tie in the bathroom mirror. Check the closet on your side, next to your gray suit. Uthan appeared in the doorway, tie in hand, already dressed in his sharp navy suit. Found it, thanks. He came up behind me and took over fixing my tie, his fingers deft and sure. Nervous? Terrified, I admitted. You. Same, but in a good way. Today was the company gala, the big annual Marathon and Hayes event where all the offices came together. It had been almost exactly a year since that fateful weekend when Uthan had booked the room next to mine, when everything had changed. A lot had happened in that year. Uthan had settled into the San Francisco office, making friends and building a reputation. We'd fully moved into our apartment, filling it with a mix of our belongings and new things we picked out together. We'd developed routines, coffee together in the morning, walks through the park on weekends, Thursday night dinners with muckas that had become sacred. We'd had our first fight about whose turn it was to do dishes and our first makeup very satisfactory. We'd met each other's families. I'd flown to Seattle for Thanksgiving with his parents and sister. He'd come to San Diego for Christmas with mine. We'd said, "I love you" so many times it had become as natural as breathing. We'd built a life. You know, Uthan said, finishing my tie and smoothing down my collar, "A year ago today, I walked out of my hotel room and saw you standing in that hallway. I thought I was hallucinating." Best hallucination ever. Best reality ever, he kissed me quickly. "Come on, we don't want to be late." The gala was at the same hotel where we'd first reconnected, though in a different ballroom. Walking through the lobby felt surreal, like stepping back in time. "Room 412 and 413, I said softly as we passed the elevators. "The rooms that changed everything." "Want to see if they're available?" Uthan asked with a grin. "For old time's sake. We have a perfectly good apartment to go home to." "True, but it might be fun to recreate that first night, me knocking on your door, you answering, both of us trying not to admit how we felt. Except now we don't have to try not to admit anything." Exactly. The ballroom was filled with colleagues from all the offices dressed in their finest. We found our assigned table, different tables this time. We checked and made the rounds, saying hello to people we knew. Jennifer Chen, who had organized that first team-building weekend, spotted us and came over with a knowing smile. "Mitchell, Tors, good to see you both. Are you two working on any cross-office collaborations?" "You could say that," Ethan said, his hand finding mine under the table. "Actually," I added, feeling bold, "we're together, have been for about a year now." Jennifer's eyebrows went up, then she laughed. "I knew it, that first weekend, the way you two looked at each other. I told my team there was definitely something there. Congratulations." After she walked away, Ethan squeezed my hand. "So we're public now." "We're public, is that okay?" "More than okay, I'm tired of hiding the best thing in my life." Throughout the evening, people approached us with congratulations and questions. Apparently, our relationship wasn't as secret as we'd thought. Several colleagues mentioned they'd suspected, had noticed the way we looked at each other in meetings, had seen us having lunch together too often for it to be just professional. "I can't believe we thought we were being subtle," I said to Ethan during a quiet moment. "We were terrible at subtle, but I don't care, let them know I'm proud to be with you." The speeches started, company updates, achievement awards, the usual corporate gala fare. But this time, instead of sitting at separate tables counting down the minutes, Ethan and I were together. His hand found mine under the table, our fingers interlacing automatically. When the speeches ended and the dancing started, Ethan stood and offered me his hand. "Dance with me. Here in front of everyone. Especially in front of everyone, I want the whole company to know you're mine." We made our way to the dance floor, joining the other couples. Ethan's arms came around my waist and I rested my hands on his shoulders, and we swayed together to some generic jazz number that the band was playing. "A year ago I couldn't have imagined this," I said quietly, "us together, not hiding, building a life." "A year ago I thought I'd missed my chance with you forever," Ethan replied, "and now here we are." "Here we are," I echoed. He pulled me closer and we danced in comfortable silence for a moment. Around us, the gala continued, people talking and laughing, the band playing, the low hum of professional networking happening. But in our little bubble, it was just us. Asterisk, you're not going to believe who I just ran into. "Marcus, please tell me it's not your boss. I told you not to get drunk at the hotel bar." "Me, I just got here, and it's worse, it's Ethan." "Marcus, Ethan who?" "Me, Ethan, high school Ethan, the Ethan." "Marcus, the guy you pined over for like a year." "Me, 2 years." "Marcus, Jesus Christ, what's he doing there?" "Me, he works for the same company, Seattle office, and he's staying in the room right next to mine." "Marcus, this is the most rom-com thing that has ever happened to anyone. What are you going to do?" "Me, we're having dinner, in like 15 minutes. "Marcus, what? Okay, deep breaths. You are a successful, attractive, put-together adult. You are not a closeted teenager anymore. You've got this." Me, what if I throw up? Marcus, you're not going to throw up, just be yourself, and text me every detail afterward or I'm never speaking to you again. I set my phone down and looked at myself in the mirror above the desk. Marcus was right, I wasn't that scared 17-year-old anymore. I'd come out in college, dated, had relationships. I'd built a career, moved to San Francisco, created a life I was proud of. I was 28 years old, for God's sake. Surely I could handle dinner with an old friend. Even if that old friend was the first person I'd ever been in love with, back when I didn't even have the words to understand what that feeling was. I changed into dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt, fixed my hair, and tried to look like someone who was totally calm about this situation. Through the wall, I heard Ethan's shower turn on, and I firmly pushed away any thoughts about what was happening in that bathroom. 15 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there in jeans and a white Henley shirt that fit him almost criminally well. His hair was still damp from the shower, and he smelled like cedar and something citrusy. "Ready?" he asked, and there was something in his smile, something tentative and hopeful, that made my heart skip. "Ready," I lied. The hotel restaurant was called the Riverfront Grill, one of those upscale casual places with exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling, and a menu that described everything as artisanal or locally sourced. It was fairly busy for a Friday night, a mix of other conference attendees and local couples on date night. The hostess led us to a booth in the back corner, away from most of the noise. As I slid into the leather seat across from Ethan, I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "This is surreal," he said once we'd ordered drinks, an IPA for him, a whiskey sour for me. "I mean, what are the odds?" "Pretty low," I agreed. "Morrison and Hayes has, what, 12 offices?" 14 now, they just opened one in Austin." He leaned back against the booth and I tried not to notice the way the soft lighting made his eyes look even warmer. "So San Francisco, tell me everything. When did you move there?" "Right after college. I did my undergrad at Berkeley, so I just kind of stayed in the area. Got an entry-level position at a startup which imploded after 2 years, then bounced around a bit before landing at Morrison and Hayes about 6 months ago." "Berkeley," Ethan said with an appreciative nod. "That's impressive, but I'm not surprised. You were always the smartest person in class." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I definitely wasn't. "You definitely were. Remember AP Calc? Mrs. Henderson used to call on you when she couldn't remember how to do something." I did remember. I also remembered that Ethan had sat 2 rows behind me in that class and I'd been hyper-aware of his presence every single day. "You were good at math too." "I was adequate at math," he corrected with a smile. "You were the one who actually understood it." Our drinks arrived, giving me a moment to collect myself. When I looked back up, Ethan was studying me again with that same unreadable expression. "What?" I asked. "Nothing, it's just," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You look good, Ryan, really good, like adult life agrees with you." "You too," I said, perhaps too quickly. "I mean, obviously you look great." There was a brief, charged silence, then Ethan cleared his throat and picked up his menu. "So tell me about Seattle," I said, desperate to fill the space. "How long have you been there?" "Since high school. My dad's job brought us out there and I just kind of stayed. Did my undergrad at UW, started working right after graduation." He set down his menu and met my eyes. "I always meant to reach out, after we moved, but everything happened so fast and then time just got away from me." "It's okay," I said, even though 17-year-old me would have desperately disagreed. "That's how it goes sometimes." "Still, you were," he stopped, shook his head. "We were close and I just disappeared on you." We were close, such a simple statement, but it contained multitudes. We had been close in that intense way teenagers can be when they're circling around feelings they don't quite understand. We'd studied together, eaten lunch together, walked to class together. We'd texted late into the night about nothing and everything. He'd been my first thought in the morning and my last before sleep. And I'd never told him how I felt. Because it was 2014 and we went to a conservative suburban high school and I was still figuring out who I was. Because I was terrified of losing what we had if I asked for more. Because I was 17 and convinced that my feelings could never possibly be reciprocated. "You had to move," I said now, taking a long sip of my drink. "That wasn't your fault." No, but I could have kept in touch better. I tried to find you on social media a few years ago, actually, but I couldn't find any profiles. I'm kind of a social media ghost, I admitted. I have a LinkedIn, but that's about it. Yeah, I saw that, but it didn't have much personal information, he smiled wryly, not very helpful for tracking down old friends. The waitress came to take our order. I went with the salmon, Ethan chose a steak. After she left, he leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. Okay, so I need to know, are you seeing anyone? Married? What's your situation? The question caught me off guard. Single, I said. Recently single, actually, about 3 months ago. Sorry to hear that, Ethan said, though his tone was carefully neutral. Don't be, it was mutual and it was time. We were together almost 2 years, but we wanted different things. I paused. What about you? Single too, there was someone serious a couple years back, but it didn't work out. He took a drink of his beer. Turns out I'm not great at relationships. I tend to hold people at arm's length, according to my ex. Ouch. Yeah, but he wasn't wrong. I have this thing where I don't really let people in. He laughed, but there was something sad in it. My therapist says I have attachment issues related to my family moving around when I was younger. The casual mention of he and his ex landed in my chest like a small explosion. Ethan was gay, or bi or pan, the label didn't matter as much as the fact that men were on the table. All these years, all the wondering, all the what-ifs that I'd convinced myself were pointless because surely he was straight, surely I'd been reading into things that weren't there. I must have been quiet for too long because Ethan's expression shifted to concern. That okay? He asked. I probably should have asked if you're cool with, I'm assuming since you're at a Morrison and Hayes event they're pretty inclusive, but… No, yes, totally fine, I rushed to say. I'm gay too, I didn't know about you. Something complex flickered across Ethan's face. Really, you didn't know in high school. I shook my head. I wondered sometimes, or hoped maybe, but I wasn't out yet myself and I was too scared to assume. Shit, Ethan said softly. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stick up in a way that was unfairly attractive. Ryan, I thought you knew, I thought that's why we were so close, I thought, he trailed off, looking genuinely distressed. God, I was so obvious about it. You weren't, I said firmly, or maybe I was just too wrapped up in my own stuff to see it. I was barely admitting it to myself back then. Our food arrived and we both took a moment to start eating, though the air between us had shifted into something heavier, charged with things unsaid. When did you come out? I asked after a moment. Officially, first year of college, but I knew before that, by sophomore year of high school definitely. He met my eyes. And I had the most massive crush on you the entire time. I nearly choked on my salmon. You what? Come on, Ethan said with a half smile. I followed you around like a puppy. I asked to be your partner for every group project. I memorized your schedule so I could accidentally run into you between classes. I thought you were just being friendly, I said weakly. I was trying to work up the courage to tell you, and then we moved and I figured I'd missed my chance. He took a bite of steak, chewed, swallowed. For years I wondered if I'd misread the signals, if maybe you were just straight and friendly and I'd projected my feelings onto normal friendship behavior. I did the same thing, I admitted, convinced myself I was imagining the connection between us because I wanted it to be there. Jesus, Ethan laughed, but it sounded almost pained. We really fucked that up, didn't we? We were kids, I said, scared kids trying to figure ourselves out. Still, he set down his fork and looked at me directly. I want you to know, those 2 years we were friends, that was the happiest I'd been up to that point in my life, even if I never said anything, even if you never knew, you meant the world to me. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tight. You meant the world to me too. We ate in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing this new information. The revelation hung between us, recontextualizing 1,000 memories. Every lingering look, every excuse to touch, every inside joke, all of it suddenly meant something different than what I'd believed for the past 10 years. Can I ask you something? Ethan said eventually. Anything. That day I left the Friday before we moved. You seemed upset when I said goodbye, like really upset was that. I remembered that day with painful clarity, the way my chest had felt hollow when he'd told me his family was moving. The way I'd wanted to grab his hand, tell him to stay, tell him everything I'd been feeling for months. The way I just stood there instead, frozen, as he'd given me an awkward hug and said, "See you Monday." "Yeah," I said quietly. That was me realizing I was about to lose my best friend and not being able to do anything about it. "Your best friend," Ethan repeated. Is that all I was? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and danger. We were walking into territory that felt both thrilling and terrifying, dragging up feelings I'd buried a decade ago. "No," I admitted, "you were my first love, I just didn't have the words for it at the time." Ethan's hand, which had been reaching for his water glass, stopped mid-motion. His eyes went wide, and for a moment he just stared at me. "Ryan, I know it's probably weird to hear now," I continued, unable to stop now that I'd started. "It's ancient history, but you asked, and I figure after 10 years we can be honest with each other, right?" "Ancient history?" Ethan repeated slowly, then so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "What if it doesn't feel like ancient history?" My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it across the table. "What?" I mean, he seemed to be struggling with something. "It's been 10 years, we're different people now, but sitting here with you it's like no time has passed at all. I'm still that 16-year-old kid who thought you hung the moon." "Ethan, I know we just reconnected. I know this is probably way too much, way too fast. But I've spent a decade wondering about the what-ifs, Ryan, and now you're here and you're telling me you felt the same way and I just—" He laughed, rubbing his face with his hands. "I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here." "I think," I said carefully, "you're saying that maybe those feelings didn't completely go away." He looked at me through his fingers. "Is that crazy?" "If it is, then we're both crazy." I took a deep breath. "Because I'm sitting here feeling like I'm 17 again, except this time I actually know what these feelings mean." Ethan lowered his hands, and the smile that spread across his face was worth every minute of teenage angst I'd ever felt. "So what do we do about it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "We work for the same company, we live in different cities, and we just reconnected about 2 hours ago." "All very logical points," Ethan agreed. "Counterpoint, I've been looking for what we had in every relationship since and I've never found it. That has to mean something." "It does," I said, "but I also think maybe we should take this slow, actually get to know each other again, the adult versions of us." "That's very mature and reasonable," Ethan said, then he grinned. "I hate it." I laughed despite myself. "What would you prefer?" "Honestly, I'd prefer to skip to the part where I know how this ends, but you're right, we should do this properly." He signaled for the check. "So here's my proposal, we spend this weekend actually catching up. No pressure, no expectations, just two old friends getting to know each other again, and then we see where we are." "I can do that," I said, even as my entire body was screaming at me to throw caution to the wind. "Good." The waitress brought the check and Ethan grabbed it before I could. "My treat, remember." "I should pay half." "Nope, this is my apology for disappearing on you for 10 years. He pulled out his credit card, then met my eyes again. "Besides, I'm hoping there will be plenty of other meals where you can pay, you know, in the future." The casualness with which he mentioned a future with me in it, made warmth spread through my chest. We left the restaurant and walked through the hotel lobby, which had mostly cleared out for the evening. The elevator ride up to the 4th floor felt charged with possibility, neither of us speaking but both hyper-aware of the other's presence in the small space. When we reached our doors, we stood in the hallway, neither of us quite ready to say goodnight. "This weekend," Ethan said. "The schedule has us pretty booked tomorrow, but we've got Saturday night free. Want to play hooky from the hotel bar and find something more interesting to do." "Like what?" "I don't know yet, something fun, something that gives us time to actually talk," he smiled. "I'll think of something good." "Okay," I agreed. "It's a date, I mean not a date, a friend date." "Ryan," Ethan was laughing now, "it can be whatever kind of date you want it to be." "Right, good, cool." He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. And the contact sent electricity through my entire arm. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day of trust falls and team-building exercises. Don't remind me." "Good night, Ryan." "Good night, Uthan." He disappeared into his room and I let myself into mine, closing the door and leaning back against it. Through the wall, I could hear him moving around, getting ready for bed. I pulled out my phone. Me, you're never going to believe what just happened. Muckas tell me everything. I spent the next hour texting Muckas every detail of the evening, from the revelation that we'd both been crushing on each other in high school to the tentative plans for tomorrow night. Muckas responded with an increasingly unhinged series of capital letters and exclamation points. Muckas, this is literally a romance novel. This is literally the plot of a romance novel. Me, I know it's insane. Muckas, so what are you going to do? Me, I don't know, take it slow, get to know him again, be smart about this. Muckas, okay, but what do you want to do? I stared at that message for a long moment. What did I want to do? Me, I want to knock on his door right now. I want to tell him I've thought about him almost every day for the past 10 years. I want to not be careful or smart or logical about this. Muckas, so why don't you? Me, because I'm terrified, because what if we try this and it doesn't work? What if we're better as a memory than as a reality? What if I lose him again? Muckas, run, love of my life, light of my existence, you can't live your life afraid of what might go wrong. Sometimes you have to take the chance. Me, when did you become so wise? Muckas, I've always been wise, you're just usually too stubborn to listen. Now go to bed before you do something impulsive, and text me updates tomorrow. I set my phone on the nightstand and got ready for bed, but sleep was a long time coming. I lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of Athens settling in next door and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Through the wall, very faintly, I heard music playing. After a moment, I recognized the song. It was Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac, the same song that had been playing in his car the last time he'd driven me home from school. I wondered if he remembered. I wondered if he'd played it on purpose. I fell asleep with my phone on my chest, still half expecting to wake up and find this had all been a very elaborate dream. The morning came way too early, announced by the shrill beep of my phone alarm at 6:30 a.m. I groaned and rolled over, briefly disoriented by the unfamiliar hotel room before the memories of last night came flooding back. Athens dinner, the revelations. I grabbed my phone and saw I had a text waiting for me, sent about 20 minutes ago. Athens morning, coffee in the lobby at 7:15. I typed back immediately, despite my better judgment about seeming too eager. Me, see you there. I showered and dressed in the business casual outfit I'd brought for the conference, gray slacks and a light blue button-down. When I checked myself in the mirror, I looked like I'd slept better than I actually had. Small mercies. I stepped out of my room at 7:10 and nearly collided with Athens, who was just locking his door. He was wearing dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his eyes look even more ridiculously brown. Perfect timing, he said, smiling. I was just about to knock. We rode the elevator down in companionable silence, though I was acutely aware of how close he was standing. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, different from last night, something woodsy and warm. The hotel lobby had been transformed overnight. A large banner read Murasun and Hayes Team Integration Weekend, and there were signs directing us to the conference room where breakfast would be served. Already, clusters of people in business casual were gathering, clutching coffee cups and making small talk with the forced enthusiasm of people who would rather be sleeping in. We grabbed coffee, black for him, cream and sugar for me, and found a relatively quiet corner of the lobby to wait for the official start time. Sleep okay? Athens asked. Not really, I admitted. You? Same, kept thinking about everything. He took a sip of his coffee. Listen, about last night. Athens Mitchell? A voice interrupted us and we both turned to see a tall woman in a sharp blazer approaching with a clipboard. And run tours? Great, you're both here. I'm Jennifer Chun, I'm coordinating the weekend. She consulted her clipboard. Looks like you're both on the same team for the day, Team Blue, lucky coincidence. I caught Athens' eye and saw my own amusement reflected there. Lucky coincidence indeed. Team activities start in 15 minutes in the grand ballroom, Jennifer continued. Make sure you grab breakfast first, it's going to be a long morning. She bustled off to corral other attendees and Athens leaned closer to me. Guess we're stuck together all day. Terrible luck, I said, fighting a smile. The absolute worst. We loaded up on breakfast. Pastries and fruit and those little yogurt parfaits that exist exclusively at Hotel Continental breakfasts, and made our way to the grand ballroom, which had been set up with several stations around the room. There were about 40 people total, divided into 4 teams of 10. Team Blues members were waiting at our designated station, and I recognized a few faces from the San Francisco office, though I hadn't worked directly with any of them. "All right, everyone," Jennifer's voice boomed through a microphone. "Welcome to day 1 of our integration weekend. Today's activities are designed to help you bond with colleagues from different offices, build trust, and improve communication. Let's start with some introductions." What followed was 2 hours of exactly the kind of corporate team-building exercises I'd been dreading. We played 2 truths and a lie. We did trust falls. We built towers out of spaghetti and marshmallows. We participated in something called the human knot that resulted in me pressed against Uthan's back while we tried to untangle ourselves from 8 other people, his hand clasped in mine, his laugh in my ear. "This is ridiculous," he murmured during a brief break between activities. "Completely ridiculous," I agreed, trying not to think about how his hand fit in mine like it was made to be there. By lunchtime, I was exhausted from the forced social interaction, but I also had to admit that the activities had worked. Our team was laughing together, making inside jokes, actually bonding. And through it all, Uthan and I kept finding ourselves paired up, partnered together, standing next to each other. During lunch, a buffet of sandwiches and salads in the hotel restaurant, Uthan and I managed to snag a table in the corner, away from most of our team. "So," he said, unwrapping his sandwich, "this morning was exhausting." I was going to say not as terrible as expected, but yeah, exhausting works too, he grinned. "Although I have to say you're very good at trust falls." "I have excellent upper body strength," I said with mock seriousness, "and I take trust falls very seriously." "I noticed you caught Johnson like he weighed nothing." "He does weigh nothing, man's built like a bird." Uthan laughed, and I felt that same rush of accomplishment I used to feel in high school when I made him laugh. Some things really hadn't changed. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a moment, his tone turning more serious. "Of course." "Last night you said I was your first love. Was there—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Was there anyone after me? I mean, obviously you dated, you mentioned your ex, but was there anyone else who came close?" I considered the question while I chewed a bite of my sandwich. "Honestly, no, I've had relationships, some of them pretty good, but nothing ever felt quite like that did, like we did." I met his eyes. "I used to think I was romanticizing it, that I was holding on to this teenage crush and letting it mess up my adult relationships." My therapist had a field day with that one. "What did she say?" "She said that maybe it wasn't about romanticizing the past, maybe it was about recognizing what real connection feels like and not settling for less." I shrugged. "Which sounds very wise and therapeutic, but it didn't make dating any easier." "No," Uthan agreed, "I don't imagine it would." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "For what it's worth, I had the same problem. Every relationship I've had, there's been this moment where I realize I'm comparing them to you, to us, and they never quite measure up." "That's not fair to them," I said softly. "I know, which is part of why those relationships ended." He reached across the table and very deliberately took my hand. "But Ryan's sitting here with you now. It's not the romanticized memory version. This is real, and it's somehow better than I remembered." My breath caught. Around us, the restaurant continued its lunch service, people chatting and laughing, completely unaware that my entire world had just tilted on its axis. "Ethan." "I know we said we'd take it slow," he interrupted. "And we will. But I need you to know this weekend, however it ends, I'm so fucking glad the universe put us in rooms next to each other." "Me too," I managed to say around the lump in my throat. He squeezed my hand once, then let go as a couple of our teammates approached our table. We shifted back into casual conversation, but something had changed. The air between us felt charged, electric with possibility. The afternoon sessions were more of the same: trust exercises, communication workshops, a bizarre scavenger hunt that sent us running around the hotel looking for items that represented our company values. Through it all, Ethan and I kept finding excuses to be near each other, to touch casually, to exchange looks that spoke volumes. By the time Jennifer dismissed us at 5 p.m. with instructions to rest up for tonight's networking dinner, I felt like a live wire buzzing with unresolved tension. "So," Ethan said as we walked back to our rooms, "tonight's the mandatory dinner thing, right?" 7 to 9 in the river room, I confirmed. Formal attire, assigned seating, speeches from the regional directors. Sounds thrilling, he said dryly, and after. After we have our plans, remember, something more interesting than the hotel bar. Right, we'd reached our doors. Ethan pulled out his key card, then turned back to me. I've been thinking about that. How do you feel about getting out of here for a bit? There's this place I found when I was researching the area, a rooftop bar about 20 minutes away. Great views, good drinks, and most importantly, no one from Morrison and Hayes. That sounds perfect. Good, I'll knock on your door around 9:15, he paused. And Ryan, wear something nice, I want to take you somewhere you deserve. Before I could respond, he disappeared into his room, leaving me standing in the hallway with my heart racing. I spent far too long getting ready for dinner, changing my outfit 3 times before settling on my best suit, a navy blue number I'd bought for my college graduation and had tailored to fit perfectly. I paired it with a crisp white shirt and a burgundy tie, then spent another 10 minutes on my hair before deciding I was being ridiculous. At 6:55, I stepped into the hallway and nearly walked into Ethan again. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him like it had been made specifically for his body, with a black shirt underneath and no tie. His hair was styled back and he'd shaved, and he looked so devastatingly handsome that I forgot how to form words. Wow, he said, looking me up and down, you clean up nice tours. You too, I managed, really nice. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other until someone else emerged from their room and we were forced to move. We walked to the river room together, falling into step naturally. The river room had been transformed for the evening. Round tables were set up throughout the space, each with white tablecloths and centerpieces of flowers. A bar was set up in one corner and waitstaff circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Large windows along one wall showed the river outside, now lit by the setting sun. Tours Ryan, a hostess, checked her clipboard. You're at table 7, Mitchell Ethan, table 4. My stomach sank. Of course we wouldn't be seated together, that would have been too easy. Ethan caught my eye and mouthed later, and I nodded, heading to my assigned table. Table 7 consisted of me, 3 people from the Seattle office I'd never met, 2 from San Francisco I vaguely recognized, and to my mild dismay, my direct supervisor, Patricia Chen, and her husband. Ryan, Patricia said warmly as I sat down, so glad you could make it. How are you finding the weekend so far? Educational, I said diplomatically, which made her laugh. That's one word for it. Have you been connecting with the Seattle team? I know integration is the whole point of this exercise. Actually, yes, I ran into an old friend from high school. He's with the Seattle office now. Oh, how wonderful, small world, you'll have to introduce me. Dinner was a multi-course affair with too many forks and several speeches from various company executives about synergy and teamwork and corporate values. I tried to pay attention, but I kept finding my gaze drifting across the room to table 4, where Ethan sat laughing at something one of his tablemates said. At one point, he looked up and caught me staring. He smiled, small and private, meant just for me. I felt heat rise to my cheeks and quickly looked back at my plate. Friend from high school, huh? The woman next to me, Sarah from Seattle, said quietly, having caught the exchange. That's some look for just friends. I opened my mouth to deny it, then closed it again. What was the point? It's complicated, I said finally. The best things usually are, she said with a knowing smile. The dinner dragged on. By the time dessert was served, some elaborate chocolate thing that probably tasted amazing but that I barely noticed, I was counting the minutes until 9. Finally, at 8:45, the speeches ended and people began to disperse. Some headed to the hotel bar, others to their rooms. I made polite goodbyes to my table mates and extracted myself as quickly as possible. I just reached the hallway when I felt a hand on my elbow. I turned to find Ethan, slightly breathless, his tie loosened. Hey, he said, thought I'd lost you in the crowd. I was making my escape. Same, that was interminable. I was going to say long, but interminable works. He glanced around the hallway, then lowered his voice, still up for getting out of here. Desperately. Good, give me 15 minutes to change into something less formal and I'll meet you back here. Perfect. We separated at our doors and I quickly changed out of my suit into dark jeans and a fitted black button-down. I was fixing my hair when I heard the knock. I opened the door to find Ethan in jeans and a deep green sweater that made his eyes look almost amber in the hallway light. "Ready?" he asked. "Let's go." We took an Uber to avoid drinking and driving, Ethan's suggestion, which I appreciated, and spent the 20-minute ride making small talk about the dinner, the weekend, anything but what was really on both our minds. The rooftop bar was called Elevation, and it was exactly the kind of place I would never have found on my own. We took an elevator to the 15th floor, then climbed a final set of stairs that opened onto a rooftop terrace strung with lights. The view of the city was spectacular, the skyline lit up against the darkening sky. Comfortable seating areas were scattered around the space, and a bar ran along one side. Music played, something low and jazzy that didn't interfere with conversation. It was perfect. We found a corner seating area with a small couch and a low table, slightly removed from other patrons. Ethan ordered an old-fashioned, I got a gin and tonic, and we settled into the comfortable cushions. "This is amazing," I said, taking in the view. "How did you find this place?" "Googled best date spots in the city," Ethan admitted, then seemed to realize what he'd said. "I mean, not that this is necessarily a date, unless you want it to be, I just wanted somewhere nice." "Ethan," I put my hand on his knee, stopping his nervous rambling. "It can be a date if you want it to be." He looked at my hand on his knee, then up at me. "I want it to be." "Then it's a date." Our drinks arrived, giving us both a moment to process that declaration. I moved my hand back to my own lap, though I immediately missed the contact. "So," Ethan said after taking a long sip of his drink, "we're on a date, our first official date. Technically our second, if you count last night's dinner. Last night was reconnaissance, this is the real thing." He shifted on the couch so he was facing me more fully. "Which means I should probably tell you all the things I should have said 10 years ago." My heart started pounding. "Okay. Okay," he took a deep breath. "In high school you were the first person who made me feel like being myself was enough, like I didn't have to try so hard to fit in or be someone I wasn't. When I was with you, everything felt easier, lighter, like the world was a little less scary." I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. "And when we moved, it felt like someone had ripped out a piece of me. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. I tried to move on. Tried to tell myself it was just a high school friendship and I'd get over it. But I never did. Every guy I dated, every relationship I tried to build, I was always looking for what we had." "Ethan." "I'm not done," he said softly. "I need to say this, all of it." "Okay." "When I saw you yesterday standing in that hallway, it was like the universe was giving me a second chance. And I know we said we'd take things slow, get to know each other again, and we should do that. But Ryan, I need you to know what I felt for you then, it never went away. If anything, it got stronger, because now I'm old enough to understand what I lost." He reached out and took my hand, threading our fingers together. His palm was warm, slightly calloused, and the contact sent electricity up my arm. "I don't know what's going to happen after this weekend," he continued. "I don't know how we make this work with you in San Francisco and me in Seattle, but I know that I've spent 10 years wondering what if, and I don't want to spend another 10 doing the same thing. So I'm just going to be honest with you, I'm falling for you, again, still, whatever the right word is." I stared at him, at this man who had been the center of my teenage universe and who had somehow walked back into my life just when I'd convinced myself I was over him. My eyes burned with unshed tears. "Say something," Ethan said quietly, "please." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "I'm terrified that this is too good to be true, that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and you'll be gone again, that we'll try this and it won't work and I'll lose you twice." "I'm terrified too," Ethan said, "but I'm more terrified of not trying. We live in different cities, we work for the same company, which could be complicated. We haven't seen each other in 10 years, we barely know who we are now." "All true," he squeezed my hand. "Counterpoint, I don't care." I laughed despite myself, tears finally spilling over. "That's not a very good counterpoint." "No, but it's honest." He reached up with his free hand and gently wiped away my tears with his thumb. "Ryan, I know this is fast, I know it's scary, but when have you ever known something was right without being able to explain why?" I thought about that, about the way I'd felt when I first met him before I even knew what those feelings meant. About the way I'd known with absolute certainty that he was important, even when I couldn't articulate how or why. Since the day I met you, I whispered. Then trust that, Ethan said, trust us. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability in the set of his shoulders, the way he was holding my hand like it was something precious. And I realized he was right. I could spend the rest of my life being careful, being logical, protecting myself from getting hurt, or I could take the chance. Okay, I said. Okay. Okay, let's do this, let's try. I took a shaky breath. I'm falling for you too, I think I never stopped. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was like sunrise. Yeah. Yeah. Can I kiss you? He asked. I've been wanting to kiss you since yesterday, and if I don't do it soon, I think I might lose my mind. Instead of answering, I leaned forward and closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid of breaking the moment. But then Ethan's hand came up to cup my jaw, and I reached up to tangle my fingers in his hair, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home. He tasted like whiskey and cinnamon, and he made this small sound in the back of his throat that went straight to my core. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Fuck, he breathed. I've been imagining that for 10 years, and it was so much better than I thought it would be. Same, I managed, my brain still trying to reboot. We sat there for a moment, just breathing together, processing what had just happened. Then Ethan laughed, a sound of pure joy, and kissed me again, shorter this time but no less sweet. So we're doing this, he said. We're doing this. We should probably figure out the logistics at some point. Probably, I agreed, but maybe not right now. Definitely not right now. He pulled me closer and I settled against his side, his arm around my shoulders. Right now, I just want to sit here with you and look at this view and pretend that nothing else exists. I can do that. We stayed at elevation for another 2 hours, talking and kissing and making up for lost time. We talked about everything, our jobs, our families, our friends, the last 10 years of our lives. Ethan told me about his mom's battle with cancer 3 years ago, she was in remission now, about his sister's wedding last summer, about his promotion to senior analyst. I told him about coming out to my parents, supportive, about my college roommate who became my best friend, about the startup that imploded spectacularly and taught me more than any degree could have. And between the talking, there was touching, hands finding each other, fingers interlacing, casual contact that felt monumental. Every touch was a promise, a question and answer. We should probably head back, Ethan said eventually, checking his phone. It's almost midnight. I don't want this to end, I admitted. It's not ending, he said firmly. It's just beginning. But we do have that early morning session tomorrow, and I don't trust myself to be appropriate in a work setting if I'm running on no sleep and still thinking about kissing you. Fair point. We Ubered back to the hotel, sitting close enough that our thighs pressed together, my hand in his. The hotel lobby was quiet when we arrived, most guests already in their rooms. We took the elevator up in silence, the tension that had dissipated at elevation slowly building again. At our doors, we stopped. Ethan pulled me close, his hands on my waist, and kissed me again. This kiss was slower, deeper, laced with promise and possibility. Good night, he murmured against my lips. Stay, I said before I could think better of it. I mean, not for anything, just to talk more. I'm not ready to say goodnight yet. Ethan pulled back to look at me, searching my face for something. Whatever he found there made him smile. Okay, yeah, let me grab my toothbrush. I'll leave my door unlocked. He disappeared into his room and I went into mine, my heart racing. I kicked off my shoes, turned on the bedside lamp, and tried to make the space look less like a generic hotel room and more like somewhere you'd want to spend time. A minute later, there was a soft knock and Ethan slipped inside, now wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, toiletry bag in hand. Hope this is okay, he said. I figured formal wear wasn't great for just talking. Perfect, I'm going to change too, make yourself comfortable. When I came out of the bathroom in my own t-shirt and pajama pants, Ethan was sitting on the bed, back against the headboard, looking oddly at home in the generic hotel room. I climbed onto the bed next to him and he immediately pulled me against his side. This okay? He asked. More than okay. We lay there for a while, just existing in each other's space. Ethan traced patterns on my arm with his fingertips and I listened to his heartbeat, steady and sure beneath my ear. "What are you thinking about?" he asked eventually. "How different this weekend could have been if you'd been in a different room, if we'd never run into each other." "I don't like thinking about that," Ethan said. "It makes me feel like I almost missed you twice." "But you didn't." "No, we found each other again." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "And I'm not letting you go this time." "Promise. Promise." We talked for another hour about nothing and everything until my words started slurring with exhaustion. Ethan shifted us down so we were lying properly on the bed and I was too tired to protest or overthink it. His arms around me felt safe, familiar in a way that shouldn't have been possible after 10 years apart. "Sleep," he murmured. "I'll be here when you wake up." I wanted to say something meaningful, something that captured how I felt in that moment, but exhaustion pulled me under before I could find the words. I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the unfamiliar but wonderful sensation of someone's arm draped across my waist. For a moment, I was disoriented, then the memories of last night came flooding back and I smiled. Ethan was still asleep, his face relaxed in a way it never quite was when he was awake. In sleep, he looked younger, softer, more like the boy I'd known in high school. I wanted to stay exactly like this forever, frozen in this perfect moment. But then Ethan's eyes fluttered open, and when they focused on me, his whole face lit up with a smile that made my chest ache. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning." "I wasn't sure if I'd dreamed last night," he admitted, "but you're real, this is real. Very real." He leaned in and kissed me, soft and sweet and perfect. When he pulled back, he was grinning. "We should probably get up. What time is it?" I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. 7:45, we have until 9 before the morning session. "Breakfast together." "Obviously." We reluctantly extracted ourselves from the bed. Ethan went back to his room to shower and change, and I did the same, both of us moving quickly to maximize our time together before we had to be professionals again. 20 minutes later, we met in the hallway, both freshly showered and dressed. In the elevator, Ethan grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "Last night wasn't a dream, right?" he asked. "If it was, we're having the same dream." "Good." The hotel restaurant was busier than yesterday, full of conference attendees fueling up for another day of team building. We grabbed food and found a small table by the window. "So," Ethan said once we'd settled in, "we should probably talk about the reality of this situation." My stomach clenched. This was it, the conversation where we acknowledged all the reasons this couldn't work. "Okay. You live in San Francisco, I live in Seattle, that's about 800 miles apart." "I'm aware." "And we work for the same company, which means we need to be careful about appearances, professional." "Right." "And we haven't seen each other in 10 years, so we're basically strangers in a lot of ways." I set down my fork. "Are you breaking up with me before we've even really started?" "What? No," Ethan looked horrified. "No, Ryan, I'm trying to be realistic about the challenges we're going to face, because I want this to work, which means we need to actually figure out how to make it work." Oh, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "Sorry," I thought. "I know what you thought and I get it, but I'm not going anywhere." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I've waited 10 years to have you, I'm not giving up because of logistics." "So what do we do?" "Well, Seattle and San Francisco are both tech hubs, we both work in finance. One of us could potentially transfer offices or find a job in the other city. That's a huge move for a relationship that's technically 1 day old." "True, so in the short term we do long distance. It's not ideal, but people do it all the time. We're both off every other weekend, we could take turns visiting, and there's FaceTime, texting, phone calls." "You've really thought about this?" "I've been thinking about it since about 3 a.m. when I should have been sleeping." He smiled ruefully. "I know it's fast, I know we should probably take more time, be more cautious, but Ryan, I'm 28 years old, I've dated enough to know when something is special, and this is special." "It is," I agreed softly. "So what do you say, want to try the long-distance thing for a while, see where this goes?" I thought about it, really thought about it. The logistics were complicated, yes. The distance was significant. There were 100 practical reasons why this might not work. But there was also the way he looked at me, the way his hand felt in mine, the way my chest had ached every day for 10 years because I'd lost him once and never quite recovered. Yes, I said, let's try. Ethan's smile could have powered the entire city. Yeah. Yeah, but we need some ground rules. Communication is huge for long distance. We need to be honest about what we're feeling, what we need. Agreed, what else? We visit each other regularly, not just one person doing all the traveling. Absolutely, and we keep this professional at work. No one needs to know we're together until we're ready. Right, I paused. When do you think we'd be ready for that? I don't know, maybe after we've been together a few months, prove to ourselves and everyone else that this is serious. That works, I took a breath. This is really happening, we're doing this. We're doing this, Ethan confirmed. Then, glancing around to make sure no one was paying attention to us, he leaned across the table and kissed me quickly. Now come on, we've got trust falls and team synergy to deal with. The second day of team building was easier than the first, maybe because I was floating on happiness and the grueling corporate activities couldn't quite penetrate my bubble of joy. Ethan and I were careful to maintain a professional distance in front of our colleagues, but every time our eyes met across the room, I felt that same electric thrill. During lunch, we managed to grab a few minutes alone in a quiet corner of the hotel courtyard. This is torture, Ethan said, keeping his voice low, being around you all day and not being able to touch you. Just a few more hours, then the closing session, dinner, and we're done. And then what? We just go back to our respective cities and pretend this weekend didn't happen. The thought made my chest tighten. No, we start figuring out how to make this work. When can I see you again? He asked, like actually see you, not at a work thing. I could come to Seattle next weekend, I offered, if you're free. I'll make myself free, I'll cancel everything, I'll call in sick if I have to. I laughed, don't get yourself fired, I need you employed so you can afford to visit me too. Fair point, he checked his watch, we should get back but Ryan. Yes. Thank you for giving us a chance. Thank you for finding me again. The afternoon sessions flew by in a blur of activities I barely registered. All I could think about was the fact that in a few hours this weekend would be over and I'd have to leave. The thought of being separated from Ethan so soon after finding him again was physically painful. The closing session was at 4 p.m., a wrap-up where Jennifer thanked everyone for their participation and talked about how the integration was going to strengthen the company. People exchanged business cards and LinkedIn information, promising to stay in touch. I was talking to someone from the Seattle office about potential collaboration on a project when I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to find Ethan, smiling politely but with heat in his eyes. Ryan, could I steal you for a minute? I wanted to discuss something about the Henderson account. There was no Henderson account, but I nodded professionally. Of course, excuse me, I said to my conversation partner. Ethan led me out of the conference room and down a hallway, then pulled me into an empty meeting room and closed the door. There's no Henderson account, is there? I said. Not even a little bit. He backed me against the door and kissed me thoroughly. Sorry, I couldn't wait anymore. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt. We're going to get caught. Worth it, he murmured against my lips, then he pulled back, slightly breathless. Okay, I'll be good, but tonight. Tonight we don't have to be careful, I finished. It's our last night here. Exactly, so here's what I'm thinking. We skip the boring closing dinner. We order room service, open that bottle of wine I saw in my mini bar and just be together. No more pretending to be professional colleagues. That sounds perfect. We returned to the closing session separately, maintaining our cover. The dinner was optional, designed for people who wanted to continue networking, but Ethan and I had both silently agreed we'd done enough team building for one weekend. At 6 p.m., I knocked on Ethan's door with a bottle of wine I'd picked up from the hotel's market and a bag of snacks that would suffice for dinner. He opened the door already changed into comfortable clothes, sweatpants, and a faded college t-shirt that somehow made him even more attractive. Hey, he said smiling, come in. His room was identical to mine in layout but felt completely different with his presence in it. His laptop was open on the desk, clothes draped over a chair, his toiletries scattered on the bathroom counter. The small signs of his life that I wanted to know everything about. "I brought provisions," I said, holding up my offerings. "Perfect, I ordered pizza too, should be here in about 30 minutes. We settled on his bed, backs against the headboard, sharing the wine straight from the bottle because neither of us could be bothered to call for glasses. "So," Ethan said, "tomorrow we both go home." "Don't remind me." "No, I mean we should talk about it, make actual plans, not just vague promises." He was right. "Okay, what are you thinking?" "Well, I looked at flights. I could come to San Francisco next Friday night, stay through Sunday, if that works for you." "It works," I said immediately. "Good, and then maybe you could come to Seattle the weekend after. I want to show you around, introduce you to my life there." "I'd like that." I took a sip of wine. "Are you nervous about this?" "Terrified," Ethan admitted. "What if the distance is too hard? What if we realize we work better as a memory than as a reality?" "What if we don't?" I countered. "What if this is exactly what we've both been looking for all these years?" "Then I guess we'd be pretty lucky." "We would be." The pizza arrived and we ate sitting on the bed, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan told me about his apartment in Seattle, his favorite coffee shop, the hiking trails he loved. I told him about my tiny studio in the Mission, the breakfast place I went to every Sunday, my friend Marcus, who was going to lose his mind when I told him everything that had happened. "I can't wait to meet him," Ethan said. "Your best friend should probably approve of me." "He will. He's been telling me for years I needed to find someone who made me light up the way you do." "I make you light up. You always have." Ethan set aside his pizza and pulled me close, kissing me slow and deep. "You make me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," he said against my lips. "Like every wrong turn I took in the last 10 years was leading me back to you." We spent the rest of the evening tangled together, talking and kissing and simply existing in each other's presence. At some point, we migrated to lying down and I fell asleep with my head on Ethan's chest, his fingers running through my hair. When I woke up in the middle of the night, the room was dark except for the glow of the city lights through the window. Ethan was still awake, staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep?" I asked quietly. "Just thinking. About. About how in a few hours you're going to get on a plane and fly 800 miles away from me." I propped myself up on my elbow to look at him. "Hey, this isn't goodbye, this is see you later." "I know, he turned to face me. "I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and this will all have been a dream, that I'll be back in Seattle alone, still wondering what if." "Then we keep talking," I said firmly. "We text good morning every day, we FaceTime before bed, we count down the days until we see each other again, we make this as real as possible even when we're apart." "You're right," he pulled me back down against his chest. "Sorry, I'm being dramatic." "You're being honest, which is what we need to be with each other." We lay there in silence for a while, just holding each other. Eventually, I felt Ethan's breathing even out as he fell asleep, but I stayed awake a little longer, memorizing the feel of his arms around me, the sound of his heartbeat, the warmth of his body against mine. Whatever happened next, wherever this relationship went, I knew one thing for certain. Finding Ethan again was the best thing that had happened to me in 10 years, and I was going to fight like hell to keep him. Morning came too soon, announced by Ethan's alarm at 6 a.m. We both had flights to catch, his at 10:30, mine at 11:15. "I don't want to move," I mumbled against his chest. "Same, but we have to," he pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Come on, we'll shower, grab breakfast and then we go back to real life." "A real life that now includes us being together," he corrected. "That's not a bad thing." "No," I agreed, "it's definitely not a bad thing." We took turns showering separately because we didn't trust ourselves to keep it innocent, and then packed our bags with an air of melancholy hanging over us. In the hallway, pulling our suitcases behind us, we both paused at the elevators. "I'm really going to miss room 413, Ethan said. "In room 412. The rooms that changed everything." In the lobby, over a quick breakfast of coffee and pastries, we finalized our plans. "I'll text you when I land," Ethan said, and we'll FaceTime tonight. Definitely, and you're still coming to San Francisco on Friday. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. He reached across the table and took my hand, not caring who saw. Ryan, I know this is going to be hard, but we can do hard things. We can, I agreed. His Uber arrived first. We stood outside the hotel, neither wanting to say goodbye. This is it, Ethan said, for now. For now, I echoed. He pulled me into a hug, holding me tight enough that I could feel his heartbeat. Thank you, he whispered, for this weekend, for taking a chance on us. Thank you for finding me again. He pulled back just enough to kiss me, sweet and slow, a promise of more to come. Then he climbed into the Uber and I watched it pull away, feeling like my heart was driving off with him. My own Uber came 10 minutes later. As the city disappeared behind me and the airport came into view, I pulled out my phone. Hey, I know we haven't even been apart for an hour, but I already miss you. Ethan, same, this is going to be harder than I thought. We've got this, 5 days until I see you again. Ethan, I'm already counting down. The airport was crowded, the security line long, but I barely noticed. I was too busy texting Ethan, too caught up in the glow of everything that had happened. At my gate, I finally called Marcus. Tell me everything, he demanded before I'd even said hello, and I mean everything. I told him about the dinner, about our confessions, about the kiss on the rooftop, about waking up in Ethan's arms and making plans for a long-distance relationship. Holy shit, Marcus said when I'd finished. This is literally the most romantic thing I've ever heard. You're living in a movie. It feels like it sometimes. So what happens now? Now we figure out how to make this work. He's coming to visit on Friday. Friday, that's 5 days away. You're not going to survive. I'll survive. I've waited 10 years. I can wait 5 days. Fair point, but Ryan. Yes. I'm really happy for you. You deserve this. You deserve someone who makes you feel the way he clearly does. Thanks, Marcus. That means a lot. My flight was called and I boarded, settling into my window seat and watching the ground crew load luggage. My phone buzzed. Ethan, boarding now. Wish you were sitting next to me. May. If this story touched your heart, show your support by liking this video. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you.